Hello everyone and welcome to yet another video. Today we're going to look at the Big Back Tour from 2020, and the Big Back Tour is quite a special race as it's kind of changed names over the years. It used to be the Tour of the Netherlands back in 1975, first originated in 1948, and then from 2003 it turned into the Eneco Tour, and then from 2017 it rebranded to the Big Back Tour. For Dutch fans, this was very special as well because Mathieu van der Poel was taking part in his second ever World Tour stage race, the first one being of course Tirreno Adriatico. Mathieu van der Poel of the 2020 season hadn't really had as much of an impact on the season as he did in 2019, where he of course won that amazing win in Amstel Gold. Nevertheless, he did impress in the nationals at the Dutch Championships, where he won after a solo 44-kilometer attack. And another thing that might have been egging on him in 2020 was that his arch rival Wout van Aert was having a splendid season on the road. But anyways, we joined the Big Back Tour on stage 5, and the situation before we start is that Mads Pedersen was actually in the lead in the GC in front of countryman Søren Kragh Andersen, who'd moved up following his time trial victory the day before, and Mathieu van der Poel was sitting 5th, 17 seconds after the Dane. This stage was a 187.5 kilometer affair, and it had 4 times the combination of the Bosberg and the Muur van Giernsberg ascent for the peloton to tackle. We joined the race here where the riders are already on the Muur, and Mathieu van der Poel is positioned up in front, and he's already making a gap between him and many of the other favorites. And Florian Seneschal of Deceuninck Quickstep, the French rider, is the only rider able to cling on to the Flying Dutchman's wheel here, and Mathieu van der Poel is just absolutely motoring up this climb and getting into the steep sections of the climb, and Florian Seneschal just loses Mathieu van der Poel's wheel here, and we can see a CCC rider and Tim Merlier, his teammate, the Belgian road race champion, is 4th on the road, but no one's able to keep with Mathieu van der Poel here on this iconic climb in Belgium. Mathieu van der Poel passes the top of the climb, and then we can see Florian Seneschal, he comes about 10 seconds after the Flying Dutchman. Moments later, we see the peloton, which includes the leader of Mads Pedersen, ascending onto the climb, and they're far behind Mathieu van der Poel at this stage. Florian Seneschal is in hot pursuit of the Flying Dutchman here when we are not on the cobble sections. And this is crazy to think that we're 48 kilometers out from the finish, and he's got a 10-second lead on Florian Seneschal. But is this going to be enough? He's just treating this road race as if it's a cyclocross race. Cyclocross races are normally around an hour, and we are about an hour from the finish. But Florian Seneschal is on his own, and we can just see the gap here from the helicopter shot, how far he has actually got to the next nearest group to him. The next climb we're coming to is the Bosberg, which is just under 1 kilometer, and it averages 5.8% and tops out at 12%. And you might recall that this is actually Tom Bonen's favorite climb. Mathieu van der Poel is making light work of the Bosberg, and he just increases the lead ever more to just over 25 seconds now, down to the second group on the road, which is of course an amalgamation of the riders who were struggling up the Muur. The chasers are completely fragmented with a group of 2, and then further down we have a group of 4 before we then can just about see the peloton, the main group, coming up. With 23 kilometers to go, we get this elite group of 6 riders forming that still have a deficit of 1 minute to Mathieu van der Poel at this stage. We have 2 Bahrain McLaren riders in there, and Mads Pedersen, the leader. Oliver Naesen is also one of the riders. So a very strong group that are working really well together. Mathieu van der Poel is just motoring it here, completely treating it like a cyclocross race, as I mentioned. However, there's a bit of trouble in the second group as they start not working together, and I think the fact is that Bahrain McLaren have 2 riders, but they're not putting in double the amount of work, and that's probably why some of them were a bit disgruntled, and that's why we're seeing the peloton here catching them up again. Then on the second time up the Bosberg with 20 kilometers to go, we see the peloton completely fragmenting here. Søren Kragh Andersen, the Danish rider, is putting the pace up at the front for Sunweb, and Stefan Kuhn, Mads Pedersen, and it looks like it's Sonny Colbrelli are the riders who are trying to keep on to the Dane's wheel, but he's really putting on some watts here and putting on the hurt, and Oliver Naesen is one of the stronger riders emerging from that move. And at this point, Mathieu van der Poel's lead has shrunk by 17 seconds, so he only has 43 seconds with 18.9 kilometers to go. So the Dutchman really needs to keep going, and 43 seconds is not a lot, but this is a classics affair, and this stage has been really hard to this point, so everyone's on kind of the limit. So that's also what they wanted to do with this Big Back Tour, is kind of simulate stages that would kind of resemble more the classics sort of racing, and well and truly happening here, to say the least. After the Bosberg, we can see that Søren Kragh Andersen and Oliver Naesen has got a bit of a gap to Stefan Kuhn and Sonny Colbrelli, but the pair they choose to set up, and suddenly two duos become a quartet, and what a phenomenal quartet we have here on our hands, to say the least. First of all, you have the man who's been driving much of the move of the day, Søren Kragh Andersen, who forced that selection on the Bosberg, and of course he also won the time trial the day before in stage 4. You also have Stefan Kuhn, of course the Swiss rider who is the defending European champion of the time trial at that stage. And then, of course, Oliver Naesen, who actually won the final stage of the Bing Bang Tour the year before, and as a result finished second on the podium for the second time in his career. So well and truly a man who's experienced at winning that stage. And then, of course, Sonny Colbrelli, who's this amazing sprinter slash classics rider as well. So it's a really strong group here with 2 time trial and 2 sort of classics riders. So this group, 4 versus 1 Mathieu van der Poel at this stage, they should really have their odds in their favor at this point. Also considering they have started working together, Stefan Kuhn and Søren Kragh Andersen would actually benefit in the GC because they were sitting second and third respectively. So they were really wanting to get something out of this. So if I was them, they're both really good time trialists, I would just put it all on the line to hunt down Mathieu van der Poel, and then the finish will settle who will win the GC. And then Sonny Colbrelli and Oliver Naesen would compete for the stage. But that's all to unfold, of course. However, the reputations of these riders doesn't really faze Mathieu van der Poel with such a huge reputation himself. The 3-time cyclocross champion is just motoring at the front and looks really comfortable on the bike, and what a phenomenal bike he's riding on as well. The chasing group are still working really well together. Oliver Naesen, however, is starting to think of the stage win and starting to skip turns, which is not good. But the third group on the road right now is unfortunately headed up by the leader Mads Pedersen, who's being forced to do all the chasing as he is the leader, and this is just a really soul-destroying thing to see in cycling. Of course, no one else has to chase, and many of them have their team leaders up the road, so the onus is put on Mads Pedersen to chase down this gap, and he must already be tired, as all the other riders are. So not a great day for Mads Pedersen. And yes, I promise I won't just do videos where Mads Pedersen is having bad days. Of course, we saw in the other video with Wout van Aert in the Tour of Denmark, he actually didn't have a good time on Kielzebye. So I promise the next video will be a better one for Mads Pedersen. With just under 12 kilometers to go, Mathieu van der Poel is still in the lead, but he has lost a lot of his advantage. It's down to 31 seconds now, so he's lost a huge chunk in the last 6 kilometers. And when we come under 10 kilometers, we can see the chasing group that are really working well together. Despite Oliver Naesen setting up some time, they are taking a lot of time out of his advantage. Some riders have broken away from the peloton. This is Dimitri Claes of Cofidis, and we have Yves Lampaert of Deceuninck Quickstep, who hasn't been that strong a team on this stage. But Mads Pedersen is still leading the peloton, and quite cruelly, there's an Alpecin Phoenix rider second wheel. By 8.3 kilometers to go, Mathieu van der Poel's lead has dropped down to 22 seconds. Mathieu van der Poel's cadence is starting to slow, you can see, with 7.2 kilometers to go, and the advantage he has now is 24 seconds over the chasing quartet. In the peloton behind, we can see Mads Pedersen. It has dawned on him he will not win this GC, and many of the other riders are starting to bunch over him now and attack out of this group, and unfortunately Mads Pedersen's day is over now. With 5.7 kilometers to go here, we can see this annoying image for the chasing quartet. They can see Mathieu van der Poel out in front, but he's still so far away. He has actually increased his lead by 4 seconds, so it is a 28-second deficit for the chasing quartet, and this must really be frustrating. But if Oliver Naesen is sitting up, as we saw a couple of times, that is another rider that you're losing. That's not very good for this quartet if it's just two riders who are already tired against Mathieu van der Poel. So everyone's on the limit here. It's absolutely amazing racing, and this amazing camera angle just showcases how close, but yet so far, Mathieu van der Poel is from the quartet. With 2.6 kilometers to go, Søren Kragh Andersen just sees Mathieu van der Poel in the distance as he chooses to up the pace here on the descent. 12 seconds is all that's in it right now, and Mathieu van der Poel, even on the descent, resorts to a super tuck just to try and eke out a bit of advantage, and he just gets around this long bend, and Søren Kragh Andersen is not content. The Dane clearly has more energy left in the tank and really tries to up the pace, but it looks like Sonny Colbrelli and Oliver Naesen are choosing to kind of sandbag this group in hope of sprinting for a stage win. When we come towards the finish, Mathieu van der Poel, of course, still has a lead, and we can't really see any of them in the background just yet. I think they have about a 10-second lead. Søren Kragh Andersen is still the rider heading up here. They're going about halfway up the Moor to the finish, and Søren Kragh Andersen is darting this group up the road, and Mathieu van der Poel is coming around the corner. It looks like it's going to be glory for the Dutchman. Will he take his first ever win in the Bing Bang Tour, in his first ever appearance? And with 150 meters, he looks around and you can just about see the chasing quartet. Will they be able to close the gap? And here we can see Sonny Colbrelli and Oliver Naassen choosing to head out. All that energy that they saved by not contributing to the work, did it actually pay off? No. Mathieu van der Poel crosses line first, then we have Oliver Naassen second and Sonny Colbrelli third, and then Søren Kragh Andersen fourth, missing out on the bonus seconds. One thing I will say as well is that Mathieu van der Poel took a lot of the intermediate sprints as well, so he clearly was going after both the stage win and the GC. But here are the official results. Mathieu van der Poel finishes 8 seconds ahead of Søren Kragh Andersen in the GC and 23 seconds ahead of Stefan Kung. And Yves Lampaert actually finished 4th in the GC, which was quite surprising. And Mads Pedersen, the unlucky leader of the day, actually managed to finish 5th. So not a bad result for the Dane either. And Mathieu van der Poel gets his first ever GC win on the World Tour and his first ever Bing Bang GC win in his first ever appearance. That's it for this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, make sure to comment down below what you thought of this victory. And again, thank you for watching and see you